This is only the second TV show I have ever done, so let's get to work. Okay, everybody, today we're going back to look at a gem, probably my favorite comedy TV show of all times. I modeled my own personal sense of humor after the main character on this show. We're going all the way back to 1977 to look at Three's Company. Oh my God, I love this TV show. Anyway, before we go any further, before we dig into this gem anymore, once and again, and as always, to the trailer, TV spot, call it what the hell you want, let's do it.
Come and knock on our door.
Come and knock on our door.
We've been waiting for you.
We've been waiting for you.
Where the kisses are hers and his. Three's Company too. Come and dance on our floor.
Come and dance on our floor.
Take a step that is new.
Take a step that is new.
We've a lovable space that needs your face. Three's Company too. You'll see that life is a ball again. Laughter is calling for you. Down at our rendezvous.
Down at our rendezvous.
Okay, everybody, there is a plethora of humanity that I have to go through before we get to the story and the summation like we always do. So, I'm going to do this one really quick. I'm going to fly through it really fast so we can cover all the bases and jet rocket through this thing so it doesn't bog us down. Anyway, here we go. Playing Jack Tripper was John Ritter. We're talking about he was on stuff like The Waltons and Hooperman and Hearts of Fire and Dave's World and Felicity. And of course he had 8 Simple Rules until he passed away. And of course he was in movies too. We're talking like Problem Child and Stay Tuned and Holy Moses and Hero at Large. So, good career. Sling Blade, for Christ's sake. Almost forgot that. Good career, long career. Passed away too young, honestly. Really, kind of a shame. Let's keep going. Playing Janet Wood. Oh my God, I had a crush on her. Joyce DeWitt. Let's hit it. We're talking about she was in stuff like The Love Boat and The Savant and Call of the Wild. But really, her acting career is small. You're not going to find much out there on her. She left acting for a long time, got sick of the business, all that kind of stuff. She goes out there and she does occasional stage plays and, has even been popping up a little bit on TV and stuff, here and there. But she really didn't stick to the business like you would have thought she was after being on such a successful show for so long. She kind of disappeared, left it all behind, and said, the hell with this. Just the way it is. Okay, playing Larry Dallas. Richard Kline. Let's do this. We're talking about he was on stuff like Maude, and 8 is Enough, and One Day at a Time, and The Love Boat, and Hotel, and Blue Bloods, and It's a Living, and His and Hers, and The Bold and the Beautiful. So, was out there doing some things, never made it to like super duper star status, but this is his legacy, and that's good enough. Okay, playing Chrissy Snow. Went on to be quite a little icon, yes she was. Let's hit it. She really started out doing like cornball parts in movies like, Ants. And she was in Magnum Force. Remember the topless chick that got blown up in the swimming pool? And she was the hot blonde in American Graffiti. And she did some TV show, Starsky and Hutch, Step by Step, Hollywood Lives, Love Boat. She had her own TV show for a short period of time called She's the Sheriff. But really acting was not her great forte, even though she was great in this role. She was really more of a Hollywood fill-in-the-gap entertainer, spokesmodel, pitch woman, talk show host, you name it. She was in and around the business, but being an actress, again, never really followed her, or found her, I should say. Playing Terri Alden. Priscilla Barnes. Let's go look. First off, she was in stuff like The Seniors and Delta Fox and Mallrats and The Devil's Rejects and Mumford and The Crossing Guard. Not TV, she was like, and American Girls and some other TV shows here and there. You know what I mean? She probably really started out in the 70s as kind of a girl you'd see in movies like that. And then later on, still popped up in movies as kind of the chick you'd see do that. Anyway, here's what it was. Okay, playing Cindy Snow, the stopgap blonde on the television show, Jenilee Harrison. Okay, here we go. She was really Rams cheerleader and a beauty queen who just got picked up and started working on TV. I mean, she popped up on like Chips and Fantasy Island and Love Boat and Dallas and Hotel and Murder, She Wrote, and she's the sheriff. She even popped up over there with Suzanne Summers, I guess, stopping in to say hi. Is what it was. Again, never had a big career, never had a huge career. It wasn't what it was. Most of these people, well, there's a few that aren't that way, but a lot of these people, their legacy was Three's Company. Just the way it is. Playing Helen Roper, Audra Lindley. Let's kick it. We're talking about she was in stuff like Modern Romance, Another World, Doc, Maud, of course, the Ropers, and Matlock, and Sybil. And she was in movies, too. She was in the Cannery Row and Desert Hearts and shit. So she was around, out, about, did her thing. Good actress, you know what I mean? You're always going to remember as Miss Roper, but fuck it, is what it is. And speaking of playing her husband, Stanley Roper, Norman Fell. He had a big fucking career, folks. That's just the way this shit goes. Let's kick it. We're talking about he was in stuff like Pork Chop Hill and Ocean's 11 and Rat Race and PT 109 and The Killers and Fitz Willie and The Graduate and The Young Runaways and Bullet. And he was on like a cajillion fucking television shows back in the day. I mean, he was in a bunch of shit. So Norman Fell had a big career, long career. Worked a lot. He wasn't doing like, 12 or 13 credits, 14, 20 credits to his name. The list was long. Playing Ralph Furley. Whoa, Don fucking nuts. Need I say more? We're talking he was on the Red Skeleton Hour. He was on the Andy Griffith Show. He was What a Country and Matlock. And he was in movies too, you know what I mean? He was in like Herbie Goes to Monte Carlo and the Apple Dumpling Gang and The Return of the Apple Dumpling Gang. If you're my age, you remember that shit. Anyway, Don Knotts, he's Don Knotts. And finally, playing Lana, the hot chick who couldn't get Jack turned on for some reason, which never made any sense, and Wedgeworth popped up, was around. We're talking about she was on TV and stuff like, The Equalizer and Another World and Filthy Rich and her Evening Shade, which might have even been her biggest thing to ever happen to her beyond Three's Company. And she was in movies too, like Miss Firecracker and Steel Magnolias. So, that's what it was. She was in a lot of shit. Whew. Told you there was a lot of people with this. Let's get going to the story. Okay, everybody, we're going to keep this short, keep it sweet, keep it fast, so we can keep it moving and get to the point where we all rather beat the summation. You got Chrissy. You got Janet. 2 roommates. Well, there was a 3rd roommate, but she's leaving, you know what I mean? She's moving on, she's moving out, she's going on with her life. So they throw her a party one night. They wake up the next day, apartment's kind of trashed, and what do they find sleeping in their bathtub? Some guy with a hangover from the night before. Guy named Jack Tripper. He wakes up. He's in the shower. Well, tub shower, whatever the hell. To find these 2 girls looking at him and wonder, what the hell is this guy? How the hell did he get here? They exchange words and pleasantries. He sits in with them for a little bit. They have breakfast together. They find out he's going to school to be a chef. Oh, doesn't that come in handy? Because these 2 chicks do not know how to cook at all. Is what it was. So they say to themselves, wouldn't it be great to have him move in with us? They ask him. He accepts. There's a problem. The downstairs is occupied by the landlord, Mr. Roper. Mr. Roper is not going to let one guy live with 2 girls, so the girls put on the ruse that Jack Tripper is gay. And for the rest of the show, he has to do that all the way through. Anyway, hilarity continues. The show moves on. At one point, the Ropers leave, and another landlord comes in, Mr. Furley. Different character, fun character, is what it was. Chrissy Snow leaves, in comes her cousin, she leaves, in comes Terri the nurse. The show moves on, it rolls about, it does whatever it does, the premise is set, it's in motion, and that's all you really need to know. Hey, that wasn't too bad, was it? Let's get to the summation. Okay, everybody, what makes Three's Company work? And this show works in a massive way. It's one of the funniest things you'll ever see. One of the most endearing shows, and is still beloved by millions, if not billions, across the globe as we speak. I think what really made this show work, more than anything, was just the true sense of friendship and love amongst the main characters. All of them. They all cared for each other deeply. They would do anything for each other. They looked out for each other. No matter how many times Jack was a raging pervert and after the girls were smacking him on the ass, they knew that Jack's intentions were always good and that he would always have their back. And he knew that the girls always looked at him in the fondest of ways, and they were all tight. And they were even tight with their crazy friggin' landlords who lived downstairs. Yeah, they would bust each other's chops and all kinds of shit like that, but in the end, they were all friends. They were all family, and that permeated the show, and it made this show work, and it made it completely endearing. And it came around also at a time of the thing that was known as Jiggle TV. You can't talk about Three's Company without talking about the fact that this was one of the true little bit raunchy, little bit sexual shows that kind of popped up on the scene. The girls were always pretty. Most of the times they would throw them every now and so often into a bikini or a pair of shorts. And let's face it, the word bra on this show was not really known that well. Let's just say Jiggle TV. And that was pretty common of the place at the time on television. I mean, you had a lot of that kind of stuff. Yeah, Charlie's Angels was kind of known as Jiggle TV. There was a little bit of Jiggle TV going on all over the place. The humor was a little bit raunchy, a little bit Benny Hill-like, and it was a little on the naughty side. And hey, let's face it, the TV shows and the TV networks pushed it back then. Remember the Battle of the Network Stars? Remember the shit that the people used to wear in that? What the fuck were they thinking? Wow. The show went along great. Everybody loved it. Everything was awesome. The third season changed a little bit, basically because they got a whole new directing staff in there, and he kind of made it a little bit more sophisticated. No more straight down the screen shots and that kind of generic directing. You started getting behind the shoulder shots. You started getting outside the door shots. You started doing that, and it made it look a little bit more professional. You had an actor like John Ritter, who was just basically a comedic genius. His timing, everything was perfect. You had Joyce DeWitt, a trained actress, somebody who came from the stage, and she was great in her role. You had Suzanne Summers, who, let's face it, if you ever watch her try to do anything else, if you ever watched her do any of these dramatic roles that she popped up in her life, she's fucking horrid. And she never really went on to anything after this. But for this role, she learned her craft, she knew what she was doing, and she became perfect as Chrissy Snow. They had a producer on the set guiding her, showing her how to act, how to react, how to build herself, and John Ritter working with her so much. She learned her craft, she nailed it, and they were all great. Everything was perfect in Happy Land until between season 3 and season 4. We all mostly know the story, folks. A lot of you have heard it, maybe some of you haven't. There became a big contract negotiation back in the day. Suzanne Summers said, "I want more money." Plain and simple. She was not her character, Chrissy Snow, folks. She was a businesswoman. She was very ambitious. She was very straightforward. She knew what she wanted to get out of the business. She was making $35,000 per episode back in the day. Now, they knew. The producers knew. The network knew. She took off. She became like the face on TV Guide or in People magazine. She was really, really popular. She was the it girl of the moment. She went in. She wanted to make more money. They said, "Hey, well, no problem. We'll up it. We'll give you $40,000 an episode." Now, keep in mind, $35,000 an episode back then is like $110,000 an episode in 2021. And they were willing to do that $5,000 bump up. That's not what she wanted. She wanted $150,000 per episode, flat out, and 10% of all profits generated from the TV show. The producers were like, "This is crazy. There's no way this is ever going to work. We're never going to give you that kind of money." Literally, in today's cash, in 2021 cash, that's $477,000 an episode. They weren't going to pay it. They weren't going to do it. Part of the problem was that Joyce DeWitt had favored nations clause, which means whatever Suzanne got, she got. So they both have to get $150K per episode, and they would both have to get 10% of the show. And it was in John Ritter's contract that he got a bigger paycheck than the two of them, which means he would get a bigger chunk of the show. So there's no way they were going to give up $500,000 per episode and 30 to 40% of the profits from the show because of one actor's demands. It was not going to happen, just the way it goes. She didn't take no very well. She would go to the rehearsals, everything seemed fine, and then all of a sudden it came the day for shooting, she'd pull a no-show. Said she broke her rib dancing, all that kind of crap. when they sent over a doctor to look at her so they can collect insurance money, because now the episode's going to get trashed and the whole delivery isn't going to work to the network and they're going to lose hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, her and her husband would not let the doctor look at her. At that point, the gig was up. Fearing that she would do the same thing again, she was written off basically for the entire 4th season. They would just have her call in at the end of shows because she was out of town helping her mom, and they wanted to not break her contract so it would look bad in the news, but to keep her relegated to just doing a phone call per episode for the last 30 seconds. She never seen the cast. She was ushered in without seeing them. Believe me, they had problems with her at this point. And when she got done doing her lines, they got her right back out the door again. That era of Three's Company ended. And you see, when they lost Suzanne Summers, it was kind of like they lost the last one that they found. You have to understand the history of this show. This show was based off of a British television show called Men About the House. They didn't do anything underhanded. They didn't steal anything from Britain. They did it in conjunction with them. They said, hey, we love your show. We want to remake it, blah, 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 blah. They got permission from Thames Television. They signed contracts. Everything worked out. And then they went out to make the television show. They found John Ritter. That was a linchpin. They knew that was going to be their guy, and then they would build the show around him. Well, they filmed a pilot that the network didn't like because the 2 girls weren't right. They actually filmed it with 2 other actresses in the roles. They said, go film another pilot. We don't like them. Well, the creators said, we're not going to film a pilot, but if you sign us, we'll go get 2 other girls. Network said, oh, well, all right, whatever. They rolled with it, and then they went and got 2 more girls. Still didn't work, though, because only one of them was Joyce DeWitt, along with another actress. They filmed the first show ever, the first episode ever of Three's Company, and it got shelved because when the network seen it, they said everything's great except that blonde. Got to find another one. Upon which they went looking, and they found Suzanne Summers. So, kind of like, their last girl in was their first girl out. In her place, they did bring in Jenilee Harrison, playing her cousin Cindy Snow, who kind of played the same character, but never could fill the shoes, never could fill the gap. And the producers know this is a stopgap. We're just going to use this as long as we can, and then as soon as we can find somebody that's a better fit, we're going to have to replace her. And that's where Priscilla Barnes comes in. She was Nurse Terri, and she actually fit in fairly well with the crew. She did a good job, played her scenes fine, she was funny, and was a good addition to the cast. And we can't overlook anything else without talking about the fact that a major part of the chemistry was also broken up when they tried to do a spin-off and make The Ropers. We all know what happened to that. It made it like a season. It died a terrible death. The Ropers were meant to be a perfect addition to a comedy show, not a comedy show in and of themselves. They did have a clause in their contracts, Norman Fell and Audra Lindley, that if it failed within a year, they could come back and reprise their roles. They could sit there and just slide right back in. But it was a couple days past a year. The contract wasn't valid anymore. So they never were able to return to Three's Company. But thankfully, their replacement, Don Knotts, was a fantastic addition to the show. A great addition to the show. He was funny as hell, professional, always knew how to deliver. Was it The Ropers again? No. But he was really, really good, and he kept that part of the show buttoned up. Now, one of the great tragedies of Three's Company was the quite sad and quite tragic final farewell of Three's Company. Now, by that I mean, they didn't really end it the way you wanted to see it. Everybody through the history of this show, I don't care who you are, always thought the end item was going to be Jack and Janet. Really, it was like logical. You could always tell there was always this feeling, this vibe, this caring between the two of them. You were waiting all the time for those two characters to finally unite, walk off into the sunset, and end. But much like they did over in Jolly Old England, they said, no, we're going to do a spin-off of this show. We're going to have him go off with a new girl and start a restaurant and all that kind of stuff. And that's exactly what they did. There was a lot of hurt feelings about that. Joyce DeWitt didn't really like it. She thought they were holding information back from her. It was one of those situations where it didn't really end pretty. And because of that, it didn't end pretty on the last episode of Three's Company. If you watch that, instead of giving this show that had 8 seasons of pure fucking magnificence, a great send-off, what they really kind of did was it was a send-off for like 60% of it. And then a launching of this new show, which was just going to keep coming out the very next week, where Jack is now with his father-in-law, and he's got his new girlfriend, soon-to-be wife, whatever, and he's over this restaurant, and the whole series was going to become this Three's a Crowd, and they were going to move on with that. And it felt like the end of Three's Company kind of took a smack in the face. Instead of giving these people the send-off they deserved, instead of giving the ending we wanted, instead of giving the right moment when they flicked off those lights and they all walked out the door, it just kept going. And you felt like the producers said, Three's Company, you don't need that no more. Fuck everything you've loved over the last 8 years. We're just going to move on with Three's a Crowd and do that. That tanked. It never worked because they couldn't catch the magic in a bottle twice. Everybody, you've probably seen this show a million times. You've probably heard of this show. But if you're one of the younger folks out there who has never seen this television show, or just seen it in the listings and been like, huh, what's that? One day, someday. You gotta go out. You gotta watch Three's Company. One of the great, great, great comedies with a heart before Kevin Smith was doing that kind of stuff. With raunch, but feeling and caring. It was one of the great farcical TV shows ever, where every episode was just based on miscommunication, misunderstanding, and I heard that wrong, so we're off on our little run. This show was magic while it was around. If you want to have a cute little hint of which episodes to watch, always go by Joyce DeWitt's hair. I know it sounds crazy, but go by Joyce DeWitt's hair. Watch the episodes where she had the short one, that's the very beginning. And then she had the curly hair, you know what I mean? Like season 2, that kind of stuff, where she had that going on, great stuff. And then she turned into Joan Jett, still really good stuff. Look out for when Joyce DeWitt gets the overgrown Joan Jett and the hair's down her back, but it's still the black shag. Yeah, you were into the last season or so of that show at that point, and it had lost its magic. They were rerunning storylines. It just wasn't the same, and you just could feel it. Okay, everybody, take care, be good, look out for each other, be nice to each other, be kind to a stranger, be cool to a friend, always take care of your family, and above all else, never, ever, ever, ever take any bullshit from anybody. Be good, and get the hell out there and watch some Three's Company. I fucking love that show.